Hey Pussynet, new video. I've been asked to talk about first aid training and things like that. So instead of answering an email, I thought I would do a little video. And I think it will help different people. So the first thing I want to make, the first big difference is urban versus non-urban training. And urban, what I call urban, is like those first aid course by Red Cross and things like that, or even at your work, something you'll get trained. And the reason is I want to make a difference because their training are meant for one purpose, is that to help somebody until help comes, so until the ambulance or first responder comes. So their training is quite different thinking. Then, so for example, if I take CPR, they'll tell you, do CPR until somebody comes. Well, if you go into a non-urban setting, so if you're in the wilderness and you're 3 hours from the closest help, I don't think you'll do CPR for 3 hours. I hope you won't do CPR for 3 hours. You're getting pretty tired. But that's the different thinking. So non-urban, I won't be talking about the urban training because of this, because it doesn't apply to what I want to talk about. So right there, I'm going to pull that aside. The second thing I want to talk is that in the non-urban setting, there's different training out there. There's combat training, there's disaster medicine, expedition medicine, there's wilderness medicine. And I think I did a video in the past kind of explaining a little bit more stuff like that. One point I want to make though, I would be very careful with people that say that they train you on to collapse medicine kind of stuff. To train in something, to be a specialist in something, you have to experiment it. So you have to be, so for example, if I'm a neurosurgeon, that means I went to school, did a lot of studies, practice on people, and that's why I'm a specialist, because I did all this. And it takes about 10,000 hours to become an expert in the field. Well, whoever can be out there and say that they had 10,000 hours of collapse environment, I would like to see that, because I'm not too aware of many places where the economy collapsed so many times. Third world countries and things like that are more towards closer to disaster medicine, and it's quite a different medicine as well. And now those people can probably, I would listen more on their training. And the reason I'm bringing this point is that the knowledge that we have to apply on in a different setting. So for example, if I'm talking about collapsing medicine and collapse economical stuff, medicine, I cannot really bring the care that I have right now. Like for example, intubation. And I did a little video on that, but I just want to bring back some point as well because of the training. If you intubate someone, okay, yeah, it's standard of care right now. But because I got electricity, I got medication, I got unlimited supplies and everything. And in the setting of a collapsing medicine, very unlikely that you'll be able to have this. So you cannot bring techniques that we're using right now into this kind of category. And we don't quite know what's going to happen. We can only run some scenarios in our head or on paper or whatever, and imagine, okay, if this would happen, what would I do with this? Oh, that doesn't work, and stuff like that. And so I think our true answers, if you really want to learn this kind of medicine, is to look through the back, 1900s, 1950s, and then ask yourself, in the 1900s, if somebody was sick, how did they intubate them? Why did they intubate? Could they intubate? What were they doing with the patient after that? Then, if they say, well, yeah, and they were using this kind of machine and stuff, or no, they didn't do it and stuff, well, then maybe you have a better question, because if our whole thing collapsed, unless you're very rich and you have your own hospitals and ventilators and whatever of the third world country in the back of your in your garage, there's no way you'll be able to run stuff like that just for something for as easy as intubation. So then, why learn to intubate if you won't use it? So anyway, so this was my little point on knowledge and everything. Is like, if you want to learn certain things, you have to ask yourself, why would I use this knowledge? Brings me back to on the course and stuff. Let's go back on the course, of course. So, okay, training. Tons of schools out there, tons of different philosophies and stuff like that. It's becoming more popular, and so there's a lot more people. So I'll put a link down on the Wilderness Medical Society. I think it's one of your best bet to go, like, you know, to shop around for companies and stuff, because if they put it on their website, usually it's because they're a pretty good course. So now, how many hours? Well, if you're just like, you know, someone that likes to go hiking and just would like to know what to do and stuff like that, I don't even bother with 8 hours course, because basically all you learn about is how to do a 911 call. That's pretty much all it is. 16 hours. You have a little bit more training and things like that, so that's not so bad. The real number of hours is more around 40, 60. You're starting to talk about something that you can do something, especially in the wilderness setting. So 40 hours, 60 hours. The one I recommend is the EMT, and the reason I recommend the EMT is that it's just before more advanced, you know, longer training, for example, paramedic training and nursing in school. So you don't have to go for 2 or 3 years of school, but still a lot of nice background to be able to do like airway management, things like this, and then you can build on. So that's why I recommend the EMT, and the wilderness EMT is the one I would recommend even more, because now you have even more thinking on how to improvise things and stuff like that. So now it brings the other question: how do I afford that? Well, there's different ways to do it, and those ones, it's not per experience. Besides the ski patroller, which that's how I started my career, but the other ones, just because I heard from it in the States, and the States has a little bit more possibilities. And so ski patroller, the one I mentioned. So if you ski, it's a nice way to do it and stuff, because. No, medicine, and that's why I'm always surprised when I see sometimes some YouTube stuff. Nobody ever in the in the survival community would say, here's the first aid, here's a survival kit, just put that in your backpack and go and read a book, and that would be it. Nobody would do that. So they always say, okay, yeah, you have to practice your skills. You have to. Well, how do you practice your first aid skill? Unless you do scenarios and practice on real people and stuff, like for example airway stuff. Yeah, it's easy to start an airway. I could show a video in 5 minutes how to start an IV. But the thing is, how to succeedly, the technique is not hard, but the art of starting IV is quite different, and now you need to practice. I did, I don't know how many IVs now, but IVs over and miss a lot of them and stuff. Like, okay, yeah, you should put your needle like this. And then even when they change like the brand of the IV, so like what type of needle it is, it totally changed your technique of approaching and everything. And a few years back at the hospital, they changed their stuff, and suddenly now everybody in the emergency we were all missing our IVs, just because the new system was you had to use your different techniques and stuff on your fingers and things like that. So the technique was not different, and the people were not different. It's just the equipment was different. So it's an art, and so medicine is like this. There's a science behind it, but there's an art as well. And so when you volunteer for an organization, it gives you a plus. It's a little bit like, just like when you go anywhere to practice your skills of starting fires and everything, you can practice on people. You can practice on, and please don't go and hurt, that's not what I just said, don't go and hurt people to practice. But that means, like, for example, if you go ski patroller, you'll run a lot of scenarios and things like that. If you're an EMT in your community, then you'll be able to practice, because that's another way you can do volunteer EMTs, cert. That's another way that you can kind of be trained and stuff like that. So all those, I'll put videos down there. But if you don't have much money, that can be a good way of going and practicing your skills, and plus getting a course for pretty good, but not too expensive. If you have more money than Wilderness Medical Society and stuff like that, the course runs between $700-800 depending on which course you're following and stuff like that. So they're a little bit on the expensive side, but good quality. Then it brings me to the last point, another point, and probably the last point I'm going to talk about. Now that you have that knowledge, what do you do with that? You're limited legally by what you can do with that. So in my training, I'm trained to intubate, drill holes, do all kind of stuff when I wear the costume. So when I wear my scrubs and things like that, then I am under protection and stuff like that, or medical guidance, and paramedics or anybody else. Unless you're a physician, you are not allowed to use any of the technique that a first aid person would be used. So the limitation of your first aid, so for example, basic airway management and things like that, so about up to the first responder. So even with all the knowledge that I have, even if with all the stuff I'm allowed to do when I'm working, when I'm outside there, it's totally different. Then it brings you a different questions. Law is black and white. This is what you can do, this is what you cannot do. Now it's what your conscience and your ethics will allow you to do. In this, I cannot answer that for you, but it's a question that you have to ask yourself about that. But be aware that, for example, like when I show you my first aid kits and things like that, I carry stuff in there that I will decide when to use it or not to use it, but that doesn't mean I'm allowed to use it. I'll decide to use it if the situation permits, because I decided that my conscience, I would rather, there's some time that I would rather have this, but I have the knowledge as well to back me up. But that doesn't mean I won't go into court, and that doesn't mean that I will win in court. So be aware of this, and I'll put a link down what they call the Samaritan Act, which basically cover almost all around the world, but mostly in North America. But this is what the law says, is that you can do up to your best of your knowledge, but your knowledge has a limitation about this. If you know how to intubate, you cannot intubate outside work someone on the street. You cannot do that unless you're a physician. Physicians are allowed, but even if you're not a physician, you're not allowed to do that, because the only reason you're allowed to do it is because when you work under medical guidance, the doctor gives him his right, say, I train this person, I trust this person, so therefore he can do it. But that's how the law protects me when I intubate someone or something like that. But other way, I cannot do it. So then when you take that decision, you have to decide what you want to do with your knowledge. And so this is a decision that you have to decide. You have to put yourself in a situation without being able to do and stuff. And well, we always have to do something to save the life of someone and things like that. Well, ask yourself also this question: is it going to save the life of someone? There's a limitation of what we're capable of doing in a setting outside a hospital. There's limitation of what we can do. Even people like, for example, with cardiac arrest. If you look at the studies of the resuscitation rate, so that means that they get out of the hospital neurally intact and on their two legs, it is very low. So even if we're doing all that things and stuff, there's a limitation with it, and this is in the best conditions. So ask yourself that question, and that, if all of those things from this video is to be able to ask yourself this question. Yes, you can find anything on the internet. You can even do on the internet how to open a thorax. But does that mean you have the right to do it, and would you use it on someone? Because you're going to be put in the stand, and they're going to ask that question to somebody else that has the same training as you. What would you have done in that situation? And that can go against you. Hope it helps.